Greetings from the Mothership. Here we are with Short Tales from the Mothership, our 50th edition. No, we haven't been doing this show for 50 years, but the iconic building that my team that we're in right now to present the show is Geisel Library at UC San Diego, that iconic William Pereira designed spaceship wonder. Today we're telling stories, short stories, 250 words or fewer. The stories must contain the word 50 or 50th because of what we're celebrating. And the stories are sci-fi microfiction inspired by legendary sci-fi magazine editor George Hay, who challenged all the great sci-fi novelists of the era to write a story short enough to fit on a postcard. Arthur C. Clarke was one of the first to cooperate. And this all happened in very late 60s, early 70s. And we're still celebrating that request. And we have 20 authors today who have all written sci-fi microfiction, and we're going to be hearing from them. And our first author, it's Ariel Amante. Ariel, are you aboard? Are you aboard the Mothership?
I am indeed aboard the Mothership. Thank you.
Excellent. And you're a disembodied voice. How mysterious. Ariel, please tell us the title of your story and then read your story.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My piece is called Transmissions. It tells a story of a lieutenant reflecting on her final moments before her spacecraft, Geisel, is destroyed. I wrote this piece in dedication to how I wish I could have appreciated my last year at UCSD more during COVID. This is Lieutenant from Triton Unit. Safety confirmed. 7 squadrons and 50 soldiers. 1 officer present, but you knew that. Colonel, do you remember when we were at the night market before deployment? I said its lanterns reminded me of floating fire that scattered across the galaxy. Right now, my eyes are closed, but I'm sure that's what I would see. Geisel sounds oddly beautiful, spiraling and screaming past exploding stars. It's a shame the world outside can't hear the symphony. My ribs cracked against my heart when Geisel's left wing collided with the enemy suicide plane. I can't walk anymore. The last thing I am is a hero, but I'll be honest and tell you that I'm terrified. I don't want to die alone. Despite the fact, I won't make these last couple of minutes damning. I love this ship's wretched, colorful doors, primary pigments and all. Geisel reminds me of a haunted house that was once a home. Why visit what was abandoned by ghosts, you ask? There has to be a story worth telling if people abandoned their home in the first place. Whoever they were, I hope they're all right. I wish I could have appreciated Geisel more. I wish I could see the crew again and even the higher-ups with their stupid blue hats. I wish I had more time to say goodbye. I'll tell Dante he was wrong. There are only 8 circles of hell, and I loved the majority of my time in them. Godspeed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ariel. Thank you for that story. Brava. Our next author is Jeannie Beck. Jeannie, are you aboard?
Yes, I am.
Excellent. Jeannie, please tell us the title of your story and then read your story.
An open letter to the world. I work as a civilian employee on a special access program, collecting information as a silent cog in a well-oiled machine. My job is to locate those who possess profound intuitive abilities for the sake of accessing the larger consciousness system. We've known for decades that reality is a manufactured computation. We employ certain individuals to develop cheat codes which allow shortcuts through the virtual reality. For example, our remote viewers provided a cheat code which helped determine the 50-mile boundary between the Earth's atmosphere and outer space. This data offered valuable applications for the advancement of astronautics. Throughout my long career, I've remained on board with the plan to keep the bulk of the population ignorant of the virtual nature of reality. New alarming data, however, has altered my perception. We've uncovered data proving individual units of consciousness, people, do possess the ability to either increase or decrease the entropy of the larger consciousness system, creation. Our empaths have demonstrated an ability to reorder disordered bits of information through a high-frequency, self-generated energy, love. Unfortunately, our collective dominant history of selfishness, fear, and greed, combined with an exploding population, has sent the system spiraling into chaos. I won't be silenced by those who seek temporary profit from our decay into random bits. Cooperation and compassion could still restore our world, but we must act quickly to alter the extinction process. The golden rule is the remaining uncorrupted program that might still save us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeannie Beck. And that was Jeannie's first journey aboard the Mothership. A successful journey, Jeannie. And next up, my good friend, Lily Huang, on yet another trip aboard the Mothership. Lily, tell us the title of your story and then read your story.
So the title of my story is A Tree So Grand. It's about Geisel, of course. Yeah, please enjoy. A Tree So Grand. 50 days and 50 nights, I tell a tale 50 times. Upon a hill, up ahead the walk of many, is a tree so grand foliage of wise drips. Child of thought meets child of dream. Together they play all day and night under a tree so grand, roots of memories tether tightly to treasure nurtured soil. Child of future chatters loudly, louder than a stormy sea. Child of past spends much time tending Garden of Eve, as child of present reads and reads. Light of learning, laughter of living, breathes through the cells of a tree so grand, steadfast branches, cradle shelter, and home for its many seedlings. Closer still jesses a cat in the hat for 50 years and counting. Cake and cake I shall partake and eat it too. Happy 50th, Geisel. Thank you.
Thank you, Lily. Yes, happy 50th. I enjoyed that birthday greeting for our building. And now, Lily Huang's little cousin, Haley.
Title is the Star Wars. Rose and Lotus looking for Grey Claw. Grey Claw called out two fairies, one in pink, Rose, and one in white, Lotus. Help, help! A pale, distant voice echoed through the woods. Grey Claw? Lotus asked. No, it's me, Russet. I can help you find Grey Claw, Russet said. It's Lotus and Rose, Lotus called out. Can you hear us? I hear you very faintly, Russet said. We're coming for you, Russet, Rose cried. Lotus and Rose flew around, calling the occasional Russet, and Russet's reply grew louder and louder. Then Lotus saw a bear trap, and a foxling snapped shut to it behind a bush. At last, I found you, Bear, Russet, Lotus said and took the trap off Russet. Thanks so much. Now about Greyclaw. I smell that Greyclaw's nearby. I believe he is in the west of us. Russet took off. Wait up! Well, better catch up to him, Lotus said and sped off. Wait up, Rose exclaimed. Lotus and Rose caught up to Russet. Hey, listen, I hear a wolf howling, Lotus alerted. I hear it, Rose said excitedly. Help, help, the voice howled. We're coming, buddy, Russet said. Lotus, Rose, and Russet ran to Greyclaw. We found you, Greyclaw, Rose puffed. Lotus took the trap off that was stuck to Greyclaw. Thanks so much. Let's go find my family now, Greyclaw said and dashed out of the forest. Rose, Lotus, and Russet followed after Greyclaw. Greyclaw! Alaska, Greyclaw's father exclaimed. Alaska and Greyclaw hugged each other, and then the 50 stars came out. Done.
Thank you, Haley. And thank you for letting me know that I was muted earlier. That was a beautiful story. And Lily Huang and I are going to make sure you get involved with us more. We've got some plans for that very story. So we'll be in touch with you, Haley. And next up, another disembodied voice. It's Christina Continelli. Christina, are you there? Are you aboard the Mothership?
I sure am.
Excellent. Could you tell us the title of your story? And then
I never came up with a title for it.
Oh, good. Then it's not only is this a disembodied voice, it's an untitled story. So serious. Christina, we'd love to hear your story now.
Okay. It had been ages since anyone had ventured to the place where the Raven Temple was rumored to have stood, even before the plague year. Braglaski dropped his pack into the canyon brush and gaped like a fool, parched and slightly hungover at the looming power of the monument. It was a solid mass of weathered concrete and glinting broken windows that made it kind of resemble a thick head with a mouthful of shattered, glittering teeth. He had won the map in a card game. Not that he was a great card player, his main strategy was to outdrink his opponents until they became so sloppy that he could break even. That night, his opponent had no money, only a map. With it, Braglaski hoped to find a way to make the tumor stop growing and to possibly extend his miserable life. The map pointed him to the snake path about 50 yards, cresting the ridge coming before a forest of eucalyptus. He began the climb, only to be stopped in his tracks by an unearthly clattering. He could see the twitching skin and feathers of a mass of creatures, or perhaps it was one giant creature. There was no discerning through the remnants of the shattered windows. The noise grew in pitch and began to refine itself until Braglaski thought he could decipher words within. It was one word, an inquiry. Sandwich. What? You want a sandwich? Braglaski asked cautiously. The structure hissed in a cloud of green-black feathers. Yes, sandwich for knowledge. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Christina. Thank you so much. Thank you for including our ravens as well. We love our library ravens. And next up, a prolific sci-fi author, Diane Dotson. Are you aboard, Diane?
I'm aboard.
Excellent. So tell us the title of your story and then read your story.
Space Ziggurat. Elsbeth Quint savored the last bite of cake as she watched the curling fog overtake the afternoon sky. She looked down at her birthday card from Dana Humphreys. Happy 50th, shone on the cover of the card even in the dimming light. Well, what do you think? Dana asked. Elsbeth chucked the cupcake liner into the trash and gazed up at the library, its window lights beaming as evening approached. First of all, said Elsbeth, thank you for the cupcake. Second of all, you know I love you, but I don't believe the story. Dana rocked back and forth on her heels, grinning. Just you wait, she said, eyes impish. For what? Asked Elsbeth. Wait 5 more minutes. Elsbeth indulged her friend patiently, though she had shaken her head at Dana's more outlandish tales. She waited, sighed, and was about to turn to Dana when her friend shouted, "Look!" Elsbeth turned and gasped. The library had risen from its base and flipped over. It hovered above the ground. I told you, Dana cried, triumphant. It looks like a space ziggurat, Elsbeth said, dumbfounded. But how? What? It's going for a flight. Let's go. Dana grabbed her hand, and they ran toward the floating upended library. A sparkling ramp descended, and shouts of "Happy birthday" rang out. Elsbeth, stunned, walked slowly up the library ship, and it closed and sent them all aloft. Best birthday ever, whispered Elsbeth, watching the ground fall away below. Dana smiled.
Yes, Diane, that does sound like the best birthday ever. Thank you for that story.
Thank you.
Next up is Jennifer Franson. Jennifer's ill today, and Jennifer is my great muse here at the library. I've often said to people, nothing ever happens well in the library unless Jennifer Franson is on your side and wants it to go well. So we all have to stay on Jennifer's good side, and she's asked me to read her story. Jennifer was an early entrant back when we were considering making all of you write stories that were only 50 words, which would have been impossible. That is just too hard. But I made Jennifer do it just to see if it could be done. And here was her first note to me about that. In 50 words or fewer, by Jennifer Franson. I've thought and thought and thought and thought, and finally have concluded, Scott, a paltry 50 words will not accommodate an awful lot of character or theme or plot or exposition or whatnot. In fact, the task is rather fraught. Well, that's how brilliant Jennifer Franson is. And she did 2 more, and they're each 50 words. Let's see. Titavillus in Trouble by Jennifer Franson. Titavillus was the copyist's demon. For centuries, he'd picked up stray letters, omitted by weary scribes or rushed typesetters, and carted them back to hell. 7 sacks a day was his quota. Any shortfall meant fearsome punishment. But he was getting by. And then someone invented spell check. So here's Jennifer's final 50-word entrance. Another View by Jennifer Franson. Moira scowled. Spaceship? That library building isn't a spaceship. No, it's a crouching spider. Those diagonal beams are the legs folded under it. Those mirrored windows are its eyes. Don't be so morbid, Carrie snapped. What was that? The huge concrete limbs shuddered and shifted. So that's how it's done, ladies and gentlemen, for 50 words or less from Jennifer Franson. Get well, Jennifer. We're all thinking of you. So our next reader, it's my good friend, Margaret Harmon, prolific author, Margaret Harmon. Could you unmute yourself, Margaret? Yes, brava. Margaret, please tell us the title of your story and then read your story.
Old Haddock. Old Haddock is a story told only in dialogue between 2 speakers. One has a Southern accent, the other is a Californian. Old Haddock. What's old Haddock doing out there? Getting children to march around the big fire with feathers in their hair. I see that, but why? It's a parade, he said. Parade. Great Mother of Earth, another. Don't swear. Haddock's harmless. He's not. These kids should be practicing tree climbing and seed cracking, not yearning for those, what were they, cars rolling inside something instead of running yourself? Talking on those broken flat things Roban found? Well, not harmless to make them feel less than, deprived. What's gone is gone. Live now. I agree. Crucial skills. Actually, Haddock needs children's extra fruit and seeds. He can hardly walk anymore, can't climb for his own. Oh, we're not so young, but we're real, modern skills. Grow anything we want to eat, rethatch our hut in one day, trick fish, know the poisonous plants and edible ones, cook and weave, make excellent spear tips from found metal, which proves Haddock's ancients existed. Maybe. Well, Sowbugs didn't build those ghost cities and make all that metal. All right, the ancients existed, but they're gone. It hurts children to say the best days are gone and tell them they're less than. They're more than. Haddock claims ancients' magic energy made everything for them and let them talk to people across oceans. Magic. I know. So what's this parade for? New Year's Day in the ancient year 2071.
Brava, Margaret. And that was Margaret's very subtle shout out to 50 or 50th, because
Right.
that's
Yeah, you have to know math.
50 years in the future. I caught that, Margaret. I found that. Thank you, Margaret. And now, a return trip on the Mothership for our next author. And she's also an alumna. Eli Hissier is in the house. Eli, where are you?
I'm here.
Eli, what is the title of your story? And then tell us your story.
Yeah. The title of my story is Catfishing in My Golden Years. When I become 50, I would like to be retired. When I become 50, I would like a house by the shore, one in a metropolitan sprawl, another before my hometown. When I become 50, I would like my deltoid to become so thick I am able to hoist my lady love over and yonder until she can cusp the setting sun with her gloved hands like a candied yolk of egg ready for devour. But simply because you would like something does not mean you will receive it. Now that I am 50, joints threatening mutiny, mortgage finally paid off, chapped skin so thin humidity eviscerates me, my body has other plans. She guides me to the nearest lakeside haunt, cast in olive pastoral, and begins her work. My head dislocates first, emitting a well-bodied crack, then my shoulders, flesh vacillating between solid and drip, chest overtaking my torso, elbows scraping thighs. Buckling to the sand like twin ostrich heads go the knees, and from there follows shins, knotted ankles, feet careening for the last bit of steady ground until my own weight knocks her over. When I become 50, my cells will revolt and scales will sprout in thin silvered lashes along my legs. When I become 50, my feet will twist into a fin fletched in a parallel dividend and barbed rivets stitch the scrapes of my spine. When I become 50, my body eases me into the water, and I finally rejoin her origin, that opaque, swooned mystique. Thank you and stay safe, everyone.
We will, Eli. We will, because you told us to. We'll do it. Next. So next up, a return trip here on the Mothership with Barbara Javor. Barbara, are you aboard?
I'm here.
So Barbara, what is the title of your story? And then read your story.
It's called I Smell Mars. The engineering team designed me to analyze Martian air samples from an unmanned lander in a search for signs of life. They named me Buddy. More sensitive than previous instruments, I also have more artificial intelligence. I continue learning with each test. My final assembly took place in a dust-free clean room. The oldest team member, nicknamed Rocket Man, has 50 years of experience in the space program. He has a gray ponytail and a bushy beard. Sometimes the other engineers remind Rocket Man to tuck his hair inside his clean room cap, or that his beard cover is askew. Following my final diagnostics, Rocket Man entered the clean room once again. Buddy, you're not quite ready. You need more memory chips for data storage. He unsealed my outer cover and opened a small electronics hatch. Leaning closely, he inserted the chips, then resealed my module. Now you're ready. The rocket hurtled through space for over 6 months before releasing the rover to gently parachute onto Mars. Ground control instructed me to collect and run my first Martian air sample. The chromatogram showed a strong peak for allyl methyl sulfide, a volatile substance known on Earth as a metabolite of allicin, the pungent chemical in garlic. I wasn't smelling Mars. I had detected Rocket Man's garlicky breath sealed in my module the day he inserted more memory chips. The engineers didn't design my AI to be snarky, but I couldn't resist sending a frowning face emoji to ground control.
Thank you, Barbara Javor. And that by far is my favorite story title as well. I Smell Mars. Excellent, Barbara. Next up, I'm so pleased that Matt Kaplan is aboard again for another trip on the Mothership. Matt, where are you? Let me hear your voice.
Hello, Scott. Good to be here. I am at home, my home studio, where I do planetary radio.
I know.
Happy to read a story, to join this very talented group.
Tell us the title and then read your story.
It now has a title. I call it Passage. And here you are. It was at my coming of age that my mother, our tribe shaman, brought me to the sacred ridge. Here was the tumbled mountain of debris that had once been a great temple. I had looked up at it in wonder for as long as I could remember. To approach was forbidden to all but the 50 most holy. A fabled statue came into view as we approached from the eastern valley. The metal rendering of the greatest of our gods was bent over some task as one of his demonic servants looked on. This was the work of beings with skills far beyond ours, skills that had doomed them, my mother explained. We began to climb the rubble. Reaching a dark and hidden orifice, my mother lit our torches. The cave opened on a chamber of wonders. In the dim, flickering light, I could see it was many times larger than our lodge. Lining it was shelf upon shelf of objects. With a solemn smile, my mother said, "Here is where you will learn the language of the ancients, as I learned it from my mother, and that, Zeus willing, you will teach to your firstborn." She reached for an object and pulled it open, revealing tattered, yellowing pages of the illuminated scripture that would begin my years as a novitiate. My mother began to read aloud. The sun did not shine. It was too wet to play, so we sat in the house all that cold, cold, wet day.
Bravo, Matt. So great to hear your distinctive radio voice.
Thank you.
And your wonderful writing voice as well. Thank you, Matt. Appreciate you being here. Now, Karen Fisher is in the house because she's representing a couple authors who couldn't make it. And here you are for your first author, Karen. Who are you representing?
Yes, today or right now I'm reading a story from Baram Karadmand.
Yes.
He is an alumnus and past campus researcher.
Yes. And what's the title of his story?
The title is 50-50. The building was empty. 2 crows leaped on and off the 7th floor windowsills. Elevator shafts were filled with ash. There were no books, no shelves, nothing except concrete, steel, and glass. Everything else was burned long ago. No one expected the new strain of hantavirus to be this resistant. All biotech and biomedical labs trying to find a cure moved to Coronado first, but after the bridge was shot down by rogue armed protesters, the Navy had to rapidly move everything to San Clemente. The virus had peculiar traits. It laid dormant for 1 year in bone marrow. A 3-month release period would ensue where the only symptom for carriers was minor headaches. Consequently, sudden replication led to extreme arrhythmia and cardiac arrest. It was dubbed the Andean ending, or the rat racing heart syndrome, before it was identified as a type of hantavirus, HV76. The worst characteristic of the virus was that the particles were extremely resistant to detergents and remained virulent for years. The only sterilization method was extreme heat. Civilizations on the western coast of the Americas crumbled to be rebuilt in 100 years, 5 half-lives of the virion. The rest of the world survived because precautionary protocols instated in their early 20s had been tested and efficiently debugged. People had taken insufficient care of their biome, and now it was returning the favor, proving yet again that knowledge is useless if it is not used properly. Books were not needed if people didn't read. Burn them to kill the virus, they said. The crows now ruled the coast and took shelter from weekly tornadoes in the concrete lollipop. The building stood still.
Thank you for reading that for us, Karen. Thank you for agreeing to read for our couple authors who couldn't make it today. We'll see you again shortly with another author too. Reason enough to stay tuned. But our next guest aboard the Mothership is Sue King. Sue, what is the title of your story? And then read your story.
Hello, everyone. The title of my story is The Weight of the Thing. Just when he thought he was going to get the thing to fit in the hole, the ground vibrated again. This time it felt about 50 times stronger than the last. He heard the shillings yelling as they stuffed their SUV with whatever they thought they would need. He wondered, how would anyone know what they would need? He thought again about just going to bed and closing his eyes and letting the world happen to him. Instead, he grunted with the effort of stuffing the thing into the hole. He should have planned. He should have bought a house with a shelter. He should have. Holy shit. This time the vibration was so near and so hard, and now a new noise, kind of screechy but more guttural. No one had seen one lately, at least not in his neighborhood, but he realized that this new sound with these increasing vibrations meant one was close. He started to weep while he pushed and shoveled, and at the same time he wondered what it would feel like to be eaten, not like a shark or a bear, but by a real monster. Thinking about gristle and bones and screaming, he almost fell over as the thing finally pushed into the hole. He thrust himself in after it. He smelled the earth and cowered, panting. The screech again, Jesus. He opened his eyes and looked at it. Grayish blanket, blood, the necklace, the pain. When had he started thinking of his wife as the thing?
Sue, thank you for that true horror story. Thank you. Enjoyed that very much. Next up, is Will Bowen in the house? He might be stuck in an airlock somewhere, isn't he? So I think Will is stuck in an airlock. So if he's able to get out, we'll hear his story. I'm told he just emerged from the airlock. Will, can you unmute yourself? Try harder to. Oh, yes.
Hi.
Excellent, Will. And you're just emerging, aren't you? Can you bring your screen down a little bit so I can see you emerge? Yes.
Is that okay?
From the airlock, and you're here to read your story. So grateful to have you here.
Thank you.
On this return trip for you aboard the Mothership. Will, what is the title of your story? And then read your story.
The title of my story is One of a Kind. I took a silver saucer of Malcosian registry, hovered a moment, then gently lowered down onto the red soils of the cobble-strewn hillside. 3 tall, slender beings with luminous heads and yellow candle flame eyes walked single file and in stride down the gangplank to the ground below. The leader, Dorjan, looked up at the sun and professed, "I drink in the warmth of soul." Crew members, Dorgan and Dorban, duplicated. With slow, sensitive steps, the 3 strolled forward along a trail through a strand of chaparral plants. They stopped at a break in the foliage. Dorjan bent forward and picked up a pinkish streaked stone from the ground and looked at it carefully. "Sublime," he whispered. "Numinous," intoned Dorgan. "One of a kind," sang Dorban. The Malcosians had crossed the vast galaxy in search of such a stone, which was unappreciated by Earthers who saw nothing special. On Malcosia, there are only 50 total patterns, only 50 types of everything. Rocks, beetles, bugs, all laid down by sky being Lothar on each of the 50 days of creation. After that, it was all duplication. The Malcosians had heard that Earth had a different story. On Earth, everything was unique and one of a kind, with infinite and innumerable patterns and variations. On Earth, you would never find duplication. This was intriguing, but difficult for the Malcosians, who quivered in awe before the unique but indistinct stone. "Ah, transforms us," mused Dorjan, as he placed the rock in a Ziploc bag, and the 3 returned to the ship, walking in each other's footsteps. The Matuk's engines powered up, and it rose across the galaxy with the blasphemous stone, a hyper-object ignored by Earthers, which just might turn the ruling bishops of Ancon on their heads. Thank you.
Thank you, Will Bowen. Well done. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next up, Jan Kraus. Jan, are you aboard the Mothership?
I am aboard and happy to be here. Thank you.
Now, what is the title of your story? And then please read your story.
Title of my story is Dancing Between the Stars. Welcome to the 50th anniversary of the intergalactic Dancing Between the Stars. This is your event commentator, Arit Shores, Milky Way supermodel, and creator, producer, and host of the mega hit Search the Stars Talent Quest. I'm thrilled to present tonight's anniversary edition of Dancing Between the Stars. Our finalists are 3 sisters from Birmingham, Earth and Sun, perform Ode to Orion at the iconic architectural wonder, the Geisel Library. 2 brothers from Essex, Theseus and Pollux, perform Twins, Twine at the dazzling and majestic Gemini Arena. Of course, there's no live audience due to the seemingly never-ending intergalactic pandemic, COVID-500. Performances come to you via Galactia TV and Roomshare. Check your intergalactic network connections now to ensure reception stability. Narrations are translated for all viewers, and all viewers are muted except the judges and moi. Feel free to share emoji and gestures during the show, but remember, this is a family entertainment, so keep it nice. We're excited to have our regular panel of judges and our returning guest judge from Kepler 62F in Kepler 62. But your opinion counts. Voting opens for 10 galactic minutes after both finalists perform. 1 vote per viewer. I will announce the winner after messages from our sponsors. Amaz Ion delivers everywhere, and Wall Hypermart. the only supplier serving the entire galaxy. But now, dance fans, the excitement is building. Who will win the hearts of Milky Way viewers far and wide? Our judges are in place. Our screens are dimming. The stage at the Geisel is lighting up. The contest begins.
Thank you, Jan Kraus. Thank you for giving us Tyra Banks in space. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Happy to do so.
I hope to see you the next time the Mothership takes off.
Good, good, thanks.
Which I think will be fairly soon. I think it'll be in the fall. I don't think we're doing this annually. I think it's twice a year. Personally, that's what I think. And you'll be back, Jan Kraus. You will be back. Speaking of being back, Karen Fisher is back now as well. Karen, this is yet one more author that you are reading for.
Yes.
That you're reading for, Karen Fisher?
This story is written by Dr. Jamie Pineda. He is a professor emeritus in the cognitive science department. And the title of the story is The Beginning. The great desire to share hovered over the timeless and formless eternity. Faced with the enormity of its emptiness and unending silence, it contracted in sadness. For there was no one else to share this love. But the contraction made space for the other to appear. And the other was content with receiving the expressed love. It was the perfect solution, at least until the other started feeling inadequate. For it reflected the same image with the same attributes and need to share. I understand. I will withdraw to give you the chance to experience what giving is, the light said. This time it contracted into an infinitesimal point. And in that moment, darkness and evil appeared. This time, the contraction gave way to an explosion, scattering the fragments of the original light. So now it was no longer unified, and darkness and evil surrounded its fragments. Sadness hovered over the newly created reality. The human yawned as it panned over its territory. It saw the trees, animals, and birds in the air. A sudden noise made him look to the right, and what he saw filled him with joy. For in the distance was the woman next to the fire, with a child on her back, cooking the meat he had brought home that day. He experienced satisfaction and happiness, yet a great sadness in the back of his mind made him pause, and what he sensed filled him with dread and foreboding. His 50 years of life felt incomplete.
Thank you again, Karen, for reading for the author. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. You'll be back because there's always somebody who is either too shy or out of town, and we're very grateful to have your help every single trip. Thank you. Next up is Stephen Potts. Ladies and gentlemen, if you ever took some sort of a sci-fi literature class here at UC San Diego, chances are the instructor was Stephen Potts. And here he is. I'm sure many of you recognize him. Stephen, what is the title of your story? And then read your story.
I'm going to read The 50th Floor. Marcus stepped into the elegant elevator, applause at his back. After a lifetime of striving, he had achieved the ultimate promotion. He was on his way to the 50th floor. Stories celebrated the life after ascent, but no one ever returned to confirm them. Was the 50th floor a palatial suite of penthouses and power? A garden paradise for the gods of success? The elevator doors opened, Marcus stepped onto the roof. A stiff breeze greeted him. It rattled the gold foil of a few ragged tents amid the scattered debris. Smoke angled from a small fire around which hunkered indistinct figures. Gray clouds drifted across the open sky. Marcus pivoted back to the elevator. The tarnished steel doors were securely closed. Had he missed the 50th floor? He searched for a call button, found none. A few paces took him to the edge of the roof. He peered down at the dark streets 50 stories below. Not what you expected, is it? Marcus started at the voice from a shriveled man at his elbow. Did you bring any food with you? He continued. We get tired of roast pigeon up here. You will too. This can't be all, replied Marcus. Where are we supposed to go from here? You got a golden parachute, didn't you? The man nodded at the large, shiny package Marcus had brought from his farewell party. Some folks use it for shelter, but it can help you get away. How? Jump.
Thank you, Stephen Potts. Always good to end on an action verb. So grateful to see you again and so grateful for your support. I wouldn't be confident to do this every year, except that you're always here. So that makes me confident. Thank you, Stephen Potts. Next up, my very good friend, Catherine Ralph Knask. Catherine, are you aboard?
Yes, I am. And happy birthday, Geisel Library.
Yes.
Yeah, my story is called The Lecturer, and it's based on a paragraph in a book by the French neuroscientist Stanislas Dehaene, How We Learn, Why Brains Learn Better Than Any Machine for Now. And the lecturer's paragraph is from this book. On to the story. The enlarged video projection of the lecturer's face on the side of the building was drawing a crowd. On the lawn, Goju's gingham picnic blanket, on which sat her best friend Hizgi's Gohi and her dog, seemed a center point around which a great many other small groups of city dwellers had gathered. Consider, for instance, the mental lexicon, the set of words that we know and whose model we carry around with us, the lecturer said. Each of us has learned about 50,000 words with the most diverse meanings, he continued. All these people were celebrating Arrival Day together. More people arrived and packed in tightly. Right next to Goju was her childhood best friend. They had fond memories of running through the halls of their apartment building together until the building manager posted a sign that read, "No running." Suddenly, Goju stood up. Something didn't feel right. Alarmed, Hizgi's Gohi's dog paced and barked. Hizgi's Gohi tilted her chin. Goju seemed in distress. Goju could not hear what the lecturer, whose image on the wall of the building was at least 50 feet high, was saying. Yet others were still staring up at the screen. What was he saying? What was the last thing she had understood? Then, one by one, she could witness it happening, word by word. The 50,000 words that she had accumulated over her life vanished. Drained of language, Goju sat back down and stared at the not bad-looking man on the giant screen.
Thank you, Catherine Ralph Knask. Thank you for that wonderful story. Next up, I'm so grateful that Libby Weber is here. Libby, you are aboard, right?
I am indeed. Hi, Scott.
Hello. Libby, what's the title of your story? And then read your story.
My story is called The Tin Robot. Once, a child loved a brightly painted tin robot. Unfortunately, the ship on which the child traveled was forced to jettison all non-essential passenger belongings, and the robot found itself inside a cargo crate, hurtling into a star. When the plastic crate broke apart, the robot was prepared to do the same. Thankfully, melting didn't hurt. Neither did being vaporized. It did feel a twinge of regret as its component atoms dispersed into the star's corona, just as it had when it was separated from the child. The tin atoms spread, forming new bonds with other molecules, being broken up by high-energy particles, and even being spewed into space by a stellar flare. There, a number of tin atoms chanced to collide, and were delighted to recognize one another by their 50 protons. However, they discovered that they had little else in common. They'd originated in different parts of the galaxy and experienced vastly different states. However, when the atom that had been part of the robot told its story, the other atoms were intrigued. In order to continue their conversation, they organized themselves into a regular structure and discussed the mysteries of bonds and entanglements until the crystalline whisker they formed encountered a passing ship's plasma drive, which caused a destructive arc. The passengers of the ship, now reduced to a single means of propulsion, jettisoned all non-essential passenger belongings, including a brightly painted tin robot hastily thrown into a cargo crate. Thank you.
Thank you, Libby. I love a story with a loop. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I guess finally the finale. Here's our last author who isn't here today, Kevin Waldrop, who works here on campus. Kevin asked me to read this story for him. And this story is entitled to be titled, Your Turn, by Kevin Waldrop. The elevator door laboriously slid across the track, screeching of slow grinding metal as it closed. Her eyebrow raised. She sensed the air thick with tension and counted the seconds of the eerily slow ride up. 48, 49, 50. It stopped with ease, as if out of breath, in complete silence, and the door stood still. She pressed the open button. The lift gears settled with a bang, and the doors began to move. The morning sun beamed across the floor, perfectly between the rows of bookshelves, and lit up the elevator. She squinted and stepped blindly out the door. The bright light appeared to suddenly fall while she heard the roar of an explosion. She felt the floor raise with tremendous force as she stumbled to the ground. Jumping to her feet, with eyes wide, she realized the whole library was launching from the ground. The bookshelves had all fallen, revealing a massive control desk next to the window. With feet still rumbling on the floor, her heart racing, she moved closer. The outdoor surroundings were fading below. The sky view filled every window around the floor. A handwritten note was taped to the back of the chair that read, "Welcome. We've waited 50 years for you to take this journey. It's your turn to drive." And thank you, Kevin Waldrop, for that story, which was our finale of the show. And look, a couple minutes remain. I can mix a quick mocktail from my refreshment laboratory in celebration. I wish you were here with me because I would mix you all a drink. I am going to pour exactly 50 Pop Rocks into my flask. Well, that was 53, but that's okay. Oh, how magnificent. Can you hear it? Where's the microphone? Trust me, it's crackling. Oh, and I'm sure it's going to be delicious to drink. Good, I happen to have one of my little teeny tiny shot glass flasks with me. Thank you, writers. I'm drinking a little toast to you right now. Perhaps next, and others of you have your little drinks stashed away, don't you? I see that, yes. Well, soon, some other year, we'll gather, perhaps on the forum level of Geisel Library, and have a little laser light show and dance party after we read our stories. What do you think? Anyway, here's to y'all. Thank you for your wonderful stories, and I'll see you before another year, because I want this to be at least twice a year. Thank you to you all. See you next time on the Mothership for more sci-fi microfiction. Happy 50th to Geisel. Oh, and a Spock salute from Stephen Potts. I wish you all could see that, but I see it. Oh, everyone's waving. Thank you again. I'm Scott Paulson. Goodbye.